Hi everyone, I'm here with Kathy Evans-Palmisano, who is a certified nurse midwife. She also does energy work with a therapeutic touch, Reiki, quantum touch, shamanic work. She's also a minister and a ceremonialist who does personal healing work. And I'm really excited to be talking with her. She has so much experience, so many talents in this area. So thank you so much, Kathy, for taking the time to talk today.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's going to be fun. I'm excited.
So you do work with frequency and vibration as a ceremonialist.
Let me explain a little bit about that. We are all vibrating. Everything that exists is vibrating because we are composed of energy. We're composed of subatomic particles and they all vibrate at various rates. When we enter sacred space, and that sacred space can be a church, that sacred space can be a grove in the forest, that sacred space can be an area that we set up and declared as sacred. And it's as simple as I oftentimes just do it by setting 4 stones in the 4 directions, welcoming the directions and declaring that sacred space. What happens is that when we are able to step into that kind of a space, our field, that is the field around us that is generated by this vibration, expands. And you can actually document this. It's really fun to do. I usually do it when I'm teaching. I can douse someone's field, say with L rods, those little L-shaped rods that they use for dowsing water and things like that with, or with a pendulum. But so I can douse someone's energy field, which typically extends about 1 arm's length from their body. And then I can put them in sacred space. So we'll put down the stones, we'll declare it sacred space. It's as simple as that, it takes a couple of minutes. And I'll put them in the space and I will redouse. And the expansion of their field is anywhere from 5 to 10 times further from their body. When you apply that, especially say in a group, then everyone's field expands and that builds that energetic container, shall we say, greatly. And so what happens is the energies that we generate with our intention and our attention to doing the ceremony, whatever that happens to be, build in this container, in this sacred space, this vessel that we've created. And so it allows everyone to have a deeper and richer experience. But also when we're done, we typically will take those very positive, beneficial energies that we've generated and we will send them out to the community at large. So whether it's the person's family, whether that's the region, whether that's the planet or the solar system. And it's very interesting to me what quantum physics is doing in terms of helping to explain things that have previously been unexplained. But the non-local phenomenon, being able to work on something in one place and have them experience it in another place, is one of the things quantum physics is able to sort of begin informing us about. And so sending those energies out, and most people have heard of the butterfly effect. Butterfly beats its wings and somewhere around the world because of the shift in the energies, there's like a tsunami potentially or whatever, or a tornado or whatever. But so as we send those energies out, then that impacts everything. And to me, that's sort of the foundation of awareness and mindfulness, is that when we're holding a positive vibration, when we're holding a high frequency, we are affecting everything that we come in contact with, both directly, so people who we meet face to face, people who we interact with periodically because they're still sort of connected to us energetically. But really, you could say that you affect the entire world because you are sending out that vibration. That vibration is connecting to everything else that's living in the vibratory field and gets passed along. So we each as individuals have the potential to positively affect everything in the world.
I have like experience with that because I was taking this course, which was called Energy of Conflict. And we were working on that, like with intention and so forth. And we literally were like asked to stand at one end of the room and have a certain intention. And someone was holding like metal, short metal, not maybe rods or strips or something to see. And like they were moving, you know, they were bending. If we had another type of intention, say like a completely empty space or just maybe even a negative space, there was no effect. So like we were literally seeing that.
And isn't it wonderful when you get that visual confirmation, or you get that experiential confirmation about things? Because, you know, we've been brought up on the scientific method. I was brought up with a scientific background. I'm a master's degree, you know, nurse. And so we base things in science. And yet the primary work that I do is not evidence-based. It's experiential, it's empirical, it's faith-based if you want to, although it really doesn't require faith. And so just to be able to have that visual confirmation of things is a lovely piece for people that are having difficulty with yeah, I just don't know. And that's okay.
Well, you mentioned briefly too that you work with, do you work with people who might have a resistance, or some people in the church? You were saying something about that.
Well, I think that for people who've been raised in a very strict religious sort of dogma,
Right.
they've oftentimes been told that these kinds of things are not okay. They're the devil's work, or they're whatever, right? So it's not so much that there's resistance or people wouldn't be coming to work with me, right? But there's probably some subconscious concerns, or there may be subconscious concerns, and sometimes they bring them up to consciousness about, am I doing anything that's going against God? Or, you know, is this in any way, shape, or form something evil? And it's absolutely not. I believe in whatever your belief system, okay? So whether you call it God, the Tao, Buddha, Allah, you know, to me that doesn't matter. There is a creator. There is a greater source from which we originate. We all originate from that same source. And I believe that, you know, what we have at our disposal, if we are intending that it's used in a positive, uplifting, expansive way, cannot harm anyone. So,
And I think that happens in a lot of religions and cultures, and maybe what is done around energy, certain practices. You know, there seems to be like this immediate fear, and that it's not God when it actually is God. Maybe it's the fear of something so powerful that makes people kind of entertain these thoughts, activity, or whatever.
yeah, well, and think about it. You know, the churches have maintained that the only way to talk to God directly is you've got to go through the priest or the minister or whatever, okay? And so we are not taught to have a direct connection. So consequently, anything, and to hold on to that power that the church wanted, they kept the mysteries to themselves. So all of the ceremony that they do is things that anyone can do. It's connecting to source. It's connecting to greater, to great spirit, to God. But you know, the church wanted to be the power center, so they taught people that was wrong, and that's really unfortunate because we originate from Creator. We are divine. We are perfect. And so from my standpoint, living a spiritual life is living in an awareness that we are spiritual beings living a physical life, not physical beings living a spiritual life, that we are divine, that we are perfect, that we keep an awareness of our connection to everything. Because to me, that's, and again, you can do, that's the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have done unto you, right? So if we are remembering that we are intimately connected energetically with every other piece of this 3D reality we're living in, then harming someone else harms us. Harming us harms someone else. So it's sacred reciprocity. If we're putting something positive out, we're going to have a positive effect on others.
Well, you said we're spiritual beings having a physical experience. There's like an element of the body dies. I mean, that's the reality, that the body eventually dies, that there is death. And sometimes I think like Western culture, or very broadly Western culture, I think has a little bit more difficult time with that, you know, compared to the Eastern culture. And like when I was growing up, you know, I grew up as a Hindu, and so we learned a lot about that. You know, like there is an emphasis on death and rebirth, and or at least maybe I'm bringing my evolutionary astrology in there. But
Yay.
yeah, I mean, we all personally have to have our own experience with that, with coming to terms with death or understanding that it's just a part of life or it's a phase. I think feel like we should have a focus on or an importance on that, like on some sort of renewal, and that the fear is what really needs to die. You
Yeah,
know,
really. That's, I agree with you completely. One of the things, you know, that Taoism, for instance, is wonderful at showing people is that everything that is living lives in cycles. I mean, a tree lives for X number of years and then it dies, and its detritus, what its breakdown products feed the rest of the forest, plants, animals. I mean, the cycles of the moon, the cycles of the planet. You know, say the even the you know the Earth move the Earth circling the sun, all the planets, everything is a circuit. And so it only makes sense that our existence, our 3D existence as physical beings, is circular as well. And again, that's one of those things that had more to do with control than anything else, was that the churches got together and decided that they would not approve the belief in reincarnation, because then people figure, oh, well, I've got more lifetimes to do this in. And so if I mess up this time, whatever. And yet there is so much good evidence to tell us that we do come back over and over and over again. And from my particular standpoint, and again, this is just mine, but it's true of many of the esoteric teachings as well. Each lifetime we come back to learn more of our lessons, more of what it is that we need to know to eventually not have to incarnate physically anymore. When we actually return fully to source and don't ever have to come back down and inhabit a physical body anymore. And so however many incarnations, however many cycles that takes. And in between our physical lives, we choose what it is that we want to learn in the next life. And maybe we achieve that and maybe we don't. But again, from the standpoint of living in a spiritual life, walking a spiritual path, it's like, what am I here to learn? Okay. And so if I have a particular experience, I have something that's painful, for instance, what's the lesson there? The lesson isn't to step into victimhood and oh, poor me and everything. That was placed in my way as an opportunity to learn. So what am I learning from that? So whether it's an emotional thing, a painful breakup, the death of a spouse, death of a beloved pet, those are all things that we can learn from. And again, everything in life is a balance too. So if we never experience pain, emotional pain, how do we fully experience joy? If we never experience physical exertion or work, how do we really experience rest? So we in our physicality deal with this spectrum in pretty much every aspect of our life. And so again, my own personal belief is that the goal is to find that perfect balance point between each of those spectrums in every aspect of our life. Hot, cold, tall, short, heavy, slight, smart, dumb, active, inactive. There's all of these spectrums. So when we can find the point where we're sitting right in the middle, in a place of equanimity, then that truly that's peace, that's calm, that's centeredness, that's awareness of and connection to all there is. And that's a beautiful place to be.
and I think with awareness comes awareness of fear instead of identifying with that fear, and like this fear around energy or spirituality or maybe what's outside of tradition. I mean, that's in every religion and culture, people from all backgrounds. I know in Hinduism, like, we have a lot of rituals and they might be more understanding of certain things like energy, but they're still like in the culture, like still have things like, oh, there's the evil eye. I personally don't believe in all that kind of stuff, the evil eye. My personal belief is that that's just your own negative energy you're projecting. But I feel like, I don't know, is something that really stops people. And so maybe when they think of like shamanic work or these other types of things, belief systems or medicine systems, it sparks that fear. Like, how can we move past that? That's like something I'm stuck on. But I think it does start with those of us who are really well-intentioned or aligned with that thinking. I think once you just feel a calling, you get to that, you move through that.
Well, I think too, once you've experienced the transcendence of leaving your physical body behind, which is one of the things energy work can do, it can allow you to actually expand beyond your physical body so that you recognize that you go on beyond just the physicality of living. Okay. And so when people experience that, it shifts their entire belief system about death, because they've actually experienced what happens when you leave the physical body behind. And they know that, oh yeah, guess what? I still have a consciousness. I still go on. It's a different form, but that's all it is. Right. That being said, I also think that I believe we're co-creators, okay? I believe, and there are people who can manifest things instantaneously. That's recorded all through history. And I believe those are true, most of us are not adept enough to do that. But we create in every single moment with our minds, first of all, because we bring it down from the non-causal into the manifest reality. Okay, so when we think about something, and you can use that self-fulfilling prophecy as an example. People worry about, oh, what's going to happen? This is going to happen. And then it does, because they put the energy into that. There's a saying, what you put your energy on or your attention on is what will manifest. So I believe that we are constantly creating, and we create the circumstances of our reality with our thoughts, our actions, our words. So the more intentional we are about those, the more able we are to create heaven on earth as opposed to hell on earth. And we all know people who live in hell on earth. Their lives are just a bloody mess and they don't know what to do about it. And we know people who they waltz through things, things that look like they should just upend them completely, and they go right through them, and they're like, yeah, that was, it was an inconvenience, whereas other people would have been devastated laying along the side of the road because it just incapacitated them. How does that happen? Is one person born with more innate capabilities of dealing with those stressors? Probably. A lot of it probably has to do with nurture. So we've got nature, we've got nurture. Beyond that, we have intention. So as we intend to consciously co-create, we begin to create a life that is blessed, So does evil exist? I guess is one of the questions people ask. And I don't know how to answer that. Like I said, I think it's part of that spectrum, because how do you have good without evil? How do you have light without dark? And so when we begin to understand that within each of us, we contain all of those pieces. So we talk about the shadow side a lot when we're talking in, esoteric and metaphysical work and shamanic work, right? And our shadow side is that which we don't want to acknowledge. It's things like anger and jealousy and greed and things like that. And they exist, okay? And we can allow ourselves to be directed by those, I'm going to say, less expansive pieces of ourselves, or we can allow ourselves to be guided by the more expansive ones. So when I say expansive, I mean things that allow us to connect in a greater way, to have a greater positive effect in the world. So if I'm jealous of someone and I act on that jealousy, I'm certainly not creating something positive. If I recognize that I'm a little jealous. I would really like to have that because that looks like a lot of fun, or it looks like it's really comfy, or whatever it is, you know. I can say, yeah, I would like to have that. That's a desire I have. And there's nothing wrong with that, because it would make my life more pleasant, right? So that's sort of my take on good and evil and how we create in our lives. So I don't know if that.
Do you bring this energy component in your work as a midwife?
Yes. I'm going to go back. This is really fun. I'm going to go back 40 some years to when I was a student nurse. And I had a nursing instructor who said, when you're a nurse, you have to be like a duck, calm on the surface and swimming like heck underneath, right? And so in your practice, you bring that, because one of the things that and I call them clients, and a lot of people call them patients, but one of the things your clients need is for you to remain calm, because they're already anxious and frightened. Okay. In the case of labor, it's a lot of hard work. It's in most cases perceived as painful. Mine was very vastly painful. You're worried about the outcome for the mom and the baby. Is it going to be healthy? So on and so forth. So our job as a nurse midwife is to help people to move through that, and alleviate those fears, allowing them to focus on the growth aspects of having a baby, which is feeling this living being inside you, which is just so incredibly remarkable. And then appreciating the gifts of that child as it's growing up. And, while labor may not be something we really look forward to or appreciate, it is our bodies doing what they're designed to do. And so we can be in gratitude for the abilities of our bodies to labor. So yes, absolutely. We bring energy into absolutely everything that we do. The difference is, are we doing it consciously or are we doing it unconsciously?
That's so interesting to me, like being a midwife and everything. I love that show called The Midwife. I don't know if you've ever seen it.
No, people have been telling me about it. I've never watched it.
It's so awesome. It's so inspiring.
It is absolutely. I was gifted to be able to be in that field. I always knew I was drawn to some field of medicine. I happened in labor and delivery was my first job, because I interviewed with a woman who I said, I want to work for her. And then I never left OB-GYN. And so to be a witness to transitions, births, and deaths is such an incredible honor. We are changing form. We're changing the way we exist in the world. It's a momentous step with an incredible potential for growth or not. And so be able to witness that and facilitate, hopefully, a growth outcome is truly an honor.
Well, a lot of people say this is such a gift or an amazing time to be alive on this planet because of the great transitional point we're at, or moment. One thing you had mentioned also was about you did some work with the G20 summit. You actually led a ceremony at that summit here in Pittsburgh years ago.
Yeah, I got a hit, which is what I call an intuitive aha moment. Because, the previous G20, there'd been a lot of violence surrounding it. And so we knew the G20 was coming to Pittsburgh. And I said, you know what, with my belief in ceremony and its ability to impact and create change, I said, we need to do a ceremony to promote a peaceful G20. And so I talked to some of my friends and colleagues, and I said, let's do this. And everybody was wonderful. They said, yes, we think that's a great idea. We met regularly. We developed, some materials to send out to people. We developed the ceremony itself, and met together at the West End Overlook, because it's a beautiful site that allows you to view the entire Golden Triangle. And we had, I think, somewhere between 75 and 100 people there. And it was truly just a miraculous event. And I'm not going to say that's why we had a peaceful G20, because I hope that it had an impact, but we're not going to say that's what did it. But the bottom line is that we felt very good about that. And the G20 here in Pittsburgh was very peaceful and productive, and win-win. Who cares how it happens, right? but you put your best effort in, and you see what in shamanic we see in our vista, our vision that's not our physical vision, the most positive outcome. So what we're doing is we're actually sending energy and intention to that future of the most positive outcome that we can envision, allowing at the same time that there may be even more positive outcome that we can't see because we don't have the perspective of creator. And so we manifest that with our attention and our intention. And then when we bring that sort of thing into our daily lives, everything shifts. And it's very powerful.
So may I ask how you conducted that? Did you say shamanic prayers? Were people standing in a circle?
We entered with 3 circuits in a counterclockwise direction, which is the drawing inward, drawing the attention inward to the center around a central altar that we had built. And then we formed a circle, and we welcomed in the directions. We welcome in 7 directions from Native American tradition, and many shamanic traditions. Then we had a variety of things that we did. Well, we also smudged everyone before they entered. Smudging is a process of waving smoke from various herbs. Typically sage is used. I like sage, cedar, and sweetgrass. I also like sacred wood. I just had a blank on it. Sorry, senior moment there. Palo Santo wood, because that clears the energetic field. So people are carrying yuck, that's a very technical term, yuck from being in the outside world, like all the stressors that act on us, the traffic and the nasty phone calls that you had from somebody complaining about something, and the irritations at work, whatever, that stuff can cling to our field. And so that lowers our vibration. So when we smudge, that smoke clears all those lower vibrating frequencies and allows us to be uplifted and expanded. So in the circle, then we did singing, and we did some movement, and we certainly did some prayers. We had a oneness prayer that we had developed. I'm trying to remember, this was, in 2010s, this was 11 years ago. But a number of things, and a number of these different participants spoke. And then we exited in the clockwise direction, also with 3 circuits, so that we were then sending that energy out to the region. Yeah, right, I was going counterclockwise, so clockwise. We went out in a clockwise direction to send the energies out that we had created and generated in that vessel, in that chalice that we did with the ceremony.
That's amazing. Do you have any special thoughts about Pittsburgh in terms of its spiritual energy? Do you think that it's a special place because we have the 3 rivers here that come together?
Absolutely. Any place that 3 rivers come together is very sacred, and there are only a few spots in the world where that happens. We also happen to have a 4th river, which is the underground aquifer. Mm-hmm. That underground aquifer used to feed the fountain, which made it incredibly potentially healing. The city, in its infinite wisdom, decided to pipe city water into the fountain now, so that's kind of distressing. And with the fracking, we really worry about the integrity of that aquifer as well. But the bottom line is that Pittsburgh, by nature, by virtue of its geography in and of itself, is a very sacred place. The Native Americans recognized this, and we had a number of tribes around here. So yes, it is. It's been recognized not just by Native Americans here, but by a Mayan elder who came here to do water ceremony with us, by a Chinese poet and philosopher, by many other spiritual, highly thought of spiritual individuals who recognize the sacredness of Pittsburgh. It also was prophesied to become a world-known center of spiritual healing. And so we hold that highest vision for Pittsburgh, that's what it will become.
I think that's also what keeps me here. I mean, I love the art scene, and it's, my gang here. but I do feel like it's definitely like a spiritual, I feel a spiritual current here very strongly.
And we have portals here. We have energy lays here. Interestingly, so when I went up to Chicago to do my graduate work, this is a little off topic, but it'll be an illustration when you say you feel the energy here. I was born and bred in Pittsburgh, right? Lived my whole life here. Went up to Chicago at 28 to do my graduate work. When I went up to Chicago, the energy there was so vastly different that I literally could feel its effect on my nervous system. And it took me a couple of months to acclimate and to be able to not feel significantly affected by that. And so every time I come back down to Pittsburgh, it would be like, oh, it just felt so good to come back into these energies. I think a physical illustration of that is driving. So my husband, my late husband, was from Chicago, grew up his whole life there. And Chicago drivers are very aggressive, okay? Because traffic's nasty all the time. So when he came down to Pittsburgh, he's like, what's wrong with everybody? They're letting me turn left in front of them. They're letting me pull in. Like, what's the deal? I said, this is Pittsburgh. This is the energy here. It's not that frantic, frenetic, aggressive energy that you grew up with. And I find it fascinating. And so if you travel around the world, you can begin to become aware of these differences in the energetic patterning or structuring of a place. And when you find a place that you walk into and you just feel that sense of calm and peace, that is in some way, shape, or form sacred space for you. So like I said, it might be a particular place in the forest where you just walk in and you just feel like you're connected to the ground, you're connected to the trees, you notice the sun streaming through the trees and the butterflies roaming around and the birds singing and whatever. It might be in your own home where you've set up a place that's your quiet place. It might be in a church. I mean, most of the sacred places on the planet were originated where there was a crossing of energy lays or a crossing of an energy lay and underground water. And the original matriarchal lines that practiced paganism recognized these sacred places and practiced there. So when the churches began taking over and ousting paganism, they built their churches on those sites. And so truly many churches are really vastly expansive spaces because of the foundational structures underneath.
What is an energy lay?
An energy lay is just a line of energy that moves through the land. And some of the older cultures, the Druids in particular, knew about those energy lays and utilized them. They're sort of like meridians. So they use them to activate the earth for crops and rain and things like that.
I wanted to go back a little bit and ask you, what exactly is shamanism?
Oh boy, I would have gotten my dictionary for you if I knew you were going to ask me that. I would have to say that shamanism is a way of looking at the world because there's so many different brands of shamanism. It's a deep understanding that everything is connected, that there's nothing that's absolutely separate. There's also an understanding that there are things that we cannot see with our physical eye or touch with our physical body, but they're there nonetheless. Think about clairvoyance, people who see spirits or talk to spirits. Clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience, people who sense things that can't be seen with the physical eye. How many times have you heard the phone ring and said, oh, I know that's so-and-so, or had a thing where so-and-so is going to call me and then the phone rings and they call you, okay? That's a type of clairsentience, connecting to things that we can't really explain in our physical 3D scientific reality, but they're there nonetheless. People who see auras, who see the auric field around people, people who see blockages in the energy in people's meridians. I mean, they've mapped the meridians, the acupuncture and acupressure meridians, they've mapped them scientifically. But for years, that was just accepted. It was empirically documented that doing things worked. but they couldn't actually show those meridians. And now they've done that. So I sort of feel like the shamans are accessing information from an expanded reality that other people don't have access to simply because they haven't trained themselves to access it.
Yeah, I know some people have done like a lot of deep work in this. I think there's ritual, right? Ritual is a component of it.
Mhm.
And like medicine or using herbs and things
Mhm.
for healing. So do you do all of that too?
I do. I mean, there's all kinds of tools. So ritual is a tool to step into what we call a non-ordinary state of consciousness, where you can see things that aren't visible to the eye. So that can be done with drumming, that can be done with chanting, that can be done with ecstatic dance, that can be done with just people who just drop into it like that. Okay, so they're tools in the toolbox. Plant medicines, sacred plant medicines, I believe were put on the planet to assist us to step into altered states of consciousness where we can learn things that we're not capable of learning or being aware of in our ordinary state of consciousness. So ayahuasca, San Pedro, peyote, mescaline, I mean, even to some degree, cannabis are medicines that alter our state of consciousness and allow us potentially to experience and to see, know things that we might not know were we not facilitating it with the plant medicines. Tobacco can be used in the same way. It's done that way in Native American ceremonies. So ritual to me is a way of stepping into that non-ordinary state of consciousness. In the case of a group ceremony, it's the ritual of getting people into that centered space, that meditative space where they're beginning to connect on more than just a physical level, on what we would call the transpersonal level. So this ties into transpersonal psychology as well. Yeah, so the different rituals, the different plant medicines, the different tools like drums and rattles and feathers and smoke and things like it, they're tools in the toolbox.
Right. And is it from, yeah. And is it traditionally from Native Americans? Did they develop this practice?
No, it's all over the world. I mean,
Oh,
you
okay.
see in Siberia, you see it
Oh,
in Russia, in South America, I mean, in Africa, in Asia. There are shamans all over the world, and there are shamanic practices all over the world, and I'm not even vaguely conversant with most of them. The ones that I've studied are mostly from South America and from North America, native. But yeah, shamans have been around since the beginning of time. There's always been the medicine man, the wise man, the healer, or the medicine woman, the wise woman, the healer, the herbalist. They're all, most of them, shamanists to some degree or another.
I mean, to me, they're like gurus, they're incredibly wise teachers.
They're teachers, exactly. Perfect. I'd like to talk a little bit about the importance of breath.
Sure, yes.
Because it's such a thing nowadays. Like, people aren't breathing. They're all in their chest, so that contributes to anxiety. We need deep abdominal breathing. And we can also visualize taking in what a dear friend of mine calls pure source oxygen. Okay. So, and I oftentimes will walk people through a guided meditation when I start with them, which involves bringing in this oxygen from source, this beautiful, pure oxygen, seeing it almost as like iridescent soap bubbles, if you will, just to give it a visual, bringing it into your body, seeing it move through your upper airways into the lungs, and through the lungs into the bloodstream, from the bloodstream into each of the cells. And as it moves into each of those cells, seeing that cell light up because it's being fully oxygenated and nourished. And so when that cell lights up, it vibrates more highly. And when you do that all over your body, your whole body begins to vibrate and people's field expands. And so breath is incredibly important. I mean, I watch people holding their breath. They're doing something there, and you can see their diaphragm not moving, and they run out of. So we need to breathe. We need to take that air in. We need to move it out. And as we exhale, we're exhaling the toxins and the stressors and all of the things that keep us down. I mean, we're meant to soar. We're meant to fly. And so if we attend more to our breath, I think we enhance our ability to fly. The other thing that we need to attend to, I believe, is grounding, our connection to Earth. There are actually frequencies in the Earth that are called Schumann resonances that are very important to us to have. And so they artificially create them for the astronauts in space. In places where these frequencies are more pronounced, because maybe there's crystals in the soil, or there's iron, or there's other things that maybe transmit the energies with a greater amplification. People feel it. So in Sedona, because of the rock structure there, these energies are amplified. So one of the meditations that I sometimes help people do is just sending their roots down into the earth and really connecting in deeply, deeply, deeply. And then when you've connected, when you've made that deep connection, you can actually feel the heartbeat of our Earth Mother, then bringing those energies up through your roots again, because it's a strength, it's warmth, it's support. I mean, look at what this earth supports. We have incredible abundance. We have a beautiful, beautiful planet we live on. And so when we connect to that, that's supporting us in all of our energetic structures. It's not just our digestive system and our, heart and things like that. It's actually supporting us energetically, and we can draw on that. So we have a constant supply of strength and energy. Just like when we breathe and when we bring down heavenly energies, we have a constant supply of light and upliftment. So when we begin to understand how to bring these energies into our bodies and allow them to coalesce and move through and enliven ourselves, then we're living more fully, more richly. And I think that's what we're here for, to live with as rich an experience of these physical bodies as we can possibly have, because eventually we're going to get rid of them, and then we've lost the opportunity to have that rich experience physically. We'll move on to whatever the next rich experience is, but if you're going to be here in physical form, you might as well take advantage of it, right?
Yeah. Breathing is so important. Being grounded. Wow, yeah, I've had my struggle with that. I think it's also people don't feel safe on Earth. They don't, so it's like they can't feel that grounding.
Particularly with COVID, people aren't feeling it.
Yeah.
With all of the politics that went on around it and everything else, people are feeling very vulnerable. And again, so vulnerability is one of the pieces of that spectrum. If we recognize that we're feeling vulnerable, then we can allow that, not try and fight it off, but we can also then begin to access those things that give us support and strength. So whether that's communication with friends, whether that's family, whether that's connecting to the earth. So the vulnerability is one end of the spectrum of safety. And I would love for everybody to feel safe and at peace. And so when we recognize our vulnerabilities, then we can take the actions that we need to feel supported and safe.
That is such an, oh my God, vulnerability is an aspect of safety. You wouldn't think that. In my mind, safety is complete anti-vulnerability.
Recognizing it, accepting it, because it's okay to feel vulnerable. Really, if you think about it, when we are in a loving relationship, we feel vulnerable. That's why people are afraid of being in love, because you've opened your heart up to another person. What if they dash it to the ground and then you're in pain, right? But yet we can't be loving if we're not open, if we can't allow ourselves to be vulnerable. So it's such an important aspect of the entirety of who we are. I'll give you another example from my personal experiences. Was probably one of the most potent ones I've ever had. I lost my husband not quite 5 years ago, very suddenly. We were truly just soulmates. We had wonderful, wonderful relationship. We were together for 33 years. And I was absolutely devastated. I mean, beyond. But in the midst of that devastating grief, I would step intentionally into my grief to do my grief work. But in the midst of that, where it felt like there was a whole side of a cannonball in my chest, I would find myself smiling through my tears and saying, oh my, I had 33 years with the most wonderful partner. Some people don't get a day of that. So I have such gratitude. Oh, yeah, that's the other thing I want to talk about is gratitude. I have such gratitude for that, on one hand is the grief, the pain of loss. And on the other hand is the gratitude for having had that in my life. And so gratitude is a huge mover. It's a huge mover of energy. It's a huge mover of energy in a positive direction. Because when we can consciously step into gratitude, everything that is less than falls away. Jealousy, greed, envy, victimhood, trauma. When we can be in gratitude, and it just takes a single thing. I'm so grateful for these beautiful green trees out there in the springtime in Pittsburgh where you look and everything looks green. I'm so grateful for the grass underneath my feet that feels so different when I walk barefoot than I walk in shoes. So gratitude can shift you from any place of negativity into a place of positivity almost instantaneously. It's an incredibly powerful emotion, attitude, intention.
You just gave me a couple epiphanies. One last thing I wanted to mention was your course.
Yeah, so the course is called Elevate and Accelerate. And, the idea is for people who are looking to create change in their life. So they decide where they want to create the change. Maybe it's in their physical, their fitness level. Maybe it's their eating patterns. Maybe it's procrastination. Maybe it's orderliness in their house, maybe it's just mental stuff. Maybe they're depressed and they're really done with depression, or maybe it's, that they're spending more money and they want to change their spending habits. Okay. So whatever it is that they're looking to change, it's very interesting that 99.9% of the time, when we actually get down to where these needs arise, it almost always comes from self-esteem and a sense of unworthiness. People's ability to love themselves. And so that's one of the things that I found in piloting the course, and it's held true with other people that have taken it after the pilot. But so we look at what exactly it is that they want to accelerate or elevate in their life. And then it's basically 6 modules. And the first one is looking at where you are and where you want to be and creating that vision. And so we want to create that vision in as much detail as possible. We want them to see it, hear it, feel it, touch it, taste it, create it in their mind in just minute detail. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be exact. So for instance, somebody wants to create change because they're tired of their job and they're looking for a new job, right? They may not know where or what that job is going to be exactly. So what we create is the kind of life they want to be able to live with that job. So they're working from home, or they're working 4 hours a day instead of 10 hours a day, or they're going to an office because they're sick of being at home and they want to actually be in another space. And the kind of people they're interacting with, people who they enjoy talking to, who are growth oriented, who are contributing and not detracting, so we can create the details without having to know the absolute about what that job is going to be. Same thing with a life partner. And so I did this for myself. After I lost my husband, I was ready to reinitiate into a new partnership. And so you don't have to know who that partner is going to be. You're looking for what characteristics you are looking for in that partner and what you want the relationship to be like. Okay. So module 1 is creating your vision, and each module has a very short reading or 2. Then we come in and we do some discussion, and it can be done virtually, but I like doing it in person better. So we'll sit and we'll talk for a while. Then we'll actually go upstairs and do an energy session that will be focusing on the pieces that we talked about. And then when they go home, they will have a little bit of homework, very light, because this is designed for busy adults, right? People are busy. I know they don't have a lot of time. So they can spend more time on it if they want to, but generally speaking, it's not going to take a lot of time. So part 2 is identifying the dissonances. That is the things that are impeding your ability to move forward into this new goal that you want to do. So we look for the things that are out of balance in your life, and then that person's understanding of why those things might be out of balance. But then when we do the energy session, we look at, are there things that they're not aware of? Like, is this maybe something that carried over from childhood, their parent-child relationship or sibling relationship, that they're not aware is actually affecting their adult life, okay? And then part 3 is removing blocks. So it's again, looking at those subconscious blocks that we have that might be keeping us from achieving our highest aspirations. And so we do this in a very conscious way, verbally, and then we do it in the energy session as well, where I may actually look for blocks in the etheric body. And then part 4 is what I call the manifesting intensive. And what we do is we're looking at the law of attraction and how we use that to focus our words and our thoughts and our actions to call in those things, because we live in a world of infinite abundance. Everything that we could possibly need is available to us. We just need to learn how to access it. So the law of attraction says that, what you put out is what you will attract. So if you're going, oh, I hate this job, I'm so sick of these people, they so irritate me, that's the vibration that you're sending out, and that's what the universe will send back to you, more of the same. So when you're sending out, wow, this new job is going to be wonderful people, and we're going to have creative conversations. And when we do a project together, everybody's going to contribute to the project. Nobody's going to be caring more than somebody else. So we set it up in very positive and present tense things. Then that's what you're sending out to the universe, and that's what the universe sends back to you. So the law of attraction. And then what we do is we start working with gratitude to amplify the energies of the law of attraction. So what we do is we step into the place of actually having that manifesting. I am so grateful for this, and this, as though it already exists in our lives. Because when we can achieve that emotional sense of gratitude, that amplifies the energies that we're sending out to the universe, so they can bring them in even more powerfully. And then the last one is just sort of culminating notes. Oh yeah, we do a vision board as well in with that manifesting intent and intensive. And then part 6 is bringing it all together, assessing what we've done, but also, if people want to, creating an altar. Now, an altar can be very simple or very elaborate. I have many of them in my house, but it is basically designed to hold the energies of the intention that you've set. So we may use the vision board as a backdrop for the altar, and then they'll pick some items that are meaningful to them, either because it's what they want, or it's just something that they find visually appealing, and that makes them feel good. So then we create the altar, and that holds those energies and also gives them a place to have their daily practice, which is one of the things we work on developing, is a daily practice, even if it's just 2 to 5 minutes of being in that place of gratitude, of intention, of attention, so that, and especially if you start your day that way or you end your day that way to begin the next day, it's a beautiful seed we plant, to allow people to actually generate those sorts of energies all through the day. And then if people want to do something more intensive than that, we can do like 1 or 2 days where I actually host people at my house, and we're doing 8 hours a day of work and things like that. So yeah, that's the course. And it's been very, very well received. I've gotten a lot of positive feedback from the people that have taken it. And they're all kind of continuing to come back even after the course is over. They say, yeah, can I come back and have another session? Of course you can. Yeah, come on back. I don't want to lose track of you just because you're done with your coursework, right? I want to continue to watch you grow and expand and enjoy life and live fully.
Well, that sounds wonderful. Create change, death and rebirth. I love it. Well, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and talking with me today. We definitely need more people like you on this planet.
Thank you. And I'm telling you, it was so nice to reconnect with you and to be able to talk deeply about things like this. I mean, this is what I've missed during COVID is this one-to-one connection with people. It just, it feeds your soul.
Hmm.
To be able to talk with people at this level, it feeds your soul. So thank you. I
Oh,
really
no problem. Thank you.
genuinely appreciate it.